Managing the difference. So you would have seen, obviously, the communications that we sent out regarding some of your questions. Thanks for those that have fed some questions back in. I've fed them to Lee and James, so hopefully they're included in terms of the presentation. It's not a massive cohort this evening, which probably helps be maybe a little bit more personal than it would have been normally. So please feel free to obviously ping some questions into Lee and James when they invite them in, but there's opportunity to ask away a little bit more than there would be in a normal situation. So yeah, appreciate your time jumping on board. Lee and James, thanks very much for joining us. I think for those that maybe wasn't on the initial one, Lee and James are from the coach development team up at the FA. They'll give themselves a bit of a brief introduction themselves in terms of what their roles entail, and then they'll take you through the presentation. So yeah, listen up, engage, enjoy the session, and I will dip in and out as we need. So Lee and James, over to you.
Thank you. Lee, do you want to kick us off? Is Lee on mute?
Yes, he is.
I can't see.
Terrible start. Terrible start. I was just saying, John Horsley, hello. I haven't seen you for a while. We did some work at St George's Park coaching. So, John, I hope you're well. Nice to meet people. I've got 3 experiences of Nottinghamshire. I delivered a level 1 course probably 10 to 15 years ago at Calverton Football Club. That's one experience. I think I'm 15 years old playing for Northampton away at Notts County, and all the players were massive. I remember that. And the other one is I always thank Mark, the football development manager. He sorted me out a couple of tickets to a Leeds match when they were playing against Doncaster in the playoff final, and I couldn't access them. So that's my experience of Nottingham. So thanks, Mark, for that. So this evening, obviously, we're going to talk around managing difference. I'm going to hand over and introduce you to James in a second. But as James has kind of briefly said, we're both in coach development roles for the FA. And my role is regional, and I work around diversity and inclusion primarily. But we also support CPD for county FAs, which is obviously why we're here this evening to talk about some of these things on difference. So I'll hand over to James just to say hello, and we'll get cracking in a second.
Hi guys, it's good to be back. This is the second CPD I've run with Nottingham, and I think some of you might have been on the last one, which was an interview with Andy Cook, which lasted a very, very long time if you stayed to the very end. So looking forward to doing this CPD with you guys. If you haven't met me, obviously I'm James. I'm in Lee's team, and my specific area of focus is physical education. So in terms of the topic tonight, dealing with 30 to 35 children in a small hall with a Christmas tree and a piano and a projector hanging from the ceiling, and yeah, you get used to trying to manage the difference. So Lee, do you want to?
Yeah, we'll kick us off. So if you want to put your cameras on or not, that's up to you. And what I'd suggest, if people just mute themselves so we don't get too much feedback and interference, that would be perfect. I think we're aiming to go for no more than an hour for you. It might be a little bit short, a little bit longer. We're not precious, particularly with time, but I'm also conscious in today's world that some of you may well have been online and on computers doing online lessons, working remotely all day long. So the last thing we want to do is to keep you on for too long. So hopefully we'll get plenty of information out to you in the next 45 minutes to an hour. But at the end of it, we'll provide an opportunity just to ask questions about coaching. Anything that we can support with, we will do that.
Just to throw in there as well, guys, at any point, use the chat box, ask your questions, because Lee, you'll have to see. I can't see the chat box anymore, so Lee, You'll have to keep an eye on that for me. But if you're comfortable, you're welcome to raise your hand so you can come into the conversation as well. Like, we don't have many people on tonight, so we're fine with that as well. So we'll just kick off. So I just wanted to start really by asking a question around these 3 images here. How do they relate to managing difference? We've got coaches on the call. You'll all have to deal with it within your sessions. So what I'd like you to do is start looking at these images. have a think about what they might mean to you. Have a think about what they might mean to the coaching session and the players that you've got within your group. And start, if you feel comfortable, start writing your thoughts down in the chat box. And whilst you're doing that, me and Lee will probably have a little chat around how the images relate to us. So I'll kick us off in terms of the first image there on the top left is the lion on stilts trying to get the giraffe. And it depends on how you look at that. You can see that as maybe as a coach, I have provided a solution to support the lion in getting the giraffe. Obviously, the giraffe is quite a big animal there. And yeah, the lion might need some help in kind of obtaining his goal. I don't want to go into too much detail around what the goal is. And as a coach, I might have provided a solution to that to help him achieve. Lee, any thoughts from you on that image?
On that image, this is where it goes. So I used to play, and it's a serious one. And one of my mates, we used to call him Giraffe Neck. He was 6'4". He's 6'4", and he had a really long neck. And there was a player who used to play centre midfield. He was a central defender. And there was a player that used to play, his name was JJ, and he was like the pit bull, he was like the lion, I should say, in centre midfield. That was what it was. So that image brings back a memory for me around a player who, I'm talking adult football as opposed to kids, but a player who would just run around the pitch and kick people, and that was good for the team that we're playing. And I'm talking at the adult level of the game. And there was the long neck, as we called him, the giraffe. I always remember just pinging balls in for him to win headers and score goals from corners. That's what it means. Just kind of two different players that I used to play with, but both were really effective at the jobs that they did. That's where it kind of that's where I look at that one.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Yeah, I'm just thinking actually because I'm quite tall and I kind of have a long neck as well actually. So I might be that centre back. What do you think of the frogs?
I'm looking at that from a coaching perspective. What it says to me is that there's somebody hanging on. So as coaches, we quite often ask players to do a task, and you'll get some that are kind of reasonably competent. So they're the two frogs that are, you can see their legs are kind of on and their arms are on. A frog's got legs and arms. Is that what you call them? I don't know. But anyway, but then you've got the one which is legs are hanging down, and it's kind of they're struggling to keep up, if you like. So yeah, I guess it's the ones that are coping with something and doing really well, and you've always got that player from a coach perspective who's really struggling with things and might need a bit of additional support to kind of stay with the others. How about yourself, mate?
Yeah. So we say you've got your strugglers, which is the one on the left, just literally hanging on. You've got your coper, who's quite comfortable on the branch, and then you've got your striver there, who you can see is ready to leap forward. And I think from a PE perspective, you have that. Well, you have that in any session, to be honest. And it's our role to help the struggler get onto the branch. We then got to get the coper ready to leap forward, and the frog that's ready to leap, who often I think we might miss out. We pick up on the kids that can't or are struggling, and maybe sometimes we forget about sometimes the copers, but a lot of the times, how do we challenge the striver who's ready to leap to another branch? So very much along the same lines as you. But yeah, the strivers, the strugglers, the copers. And the
James,
last one.
James, we've got some questions in the chat as well. So Greg's got a question. I don't know if you want to unmute yourself, Greg, and explain what you put in the chat.
What do you mean? What question?
Whichever one you want to take your picks. I know you commented on a couple of them.
There's a couple of comments, wasn't there, Greg, that you kind of make comments on?
Right, yeah. Well, like the image one with lion and giraffe, you make them all equal. Yeah, the lion's more at the giraffe's height, but it can't use its natural. It's used to running on the ground and pace, so it equals it out.
Yeah, that's a good one. That.
Yeah. The frogs, I say they're all trying to do the same task with different varying ability. Like I say, some find it easier than others. And the sumo, it's an imbalanced challenge, but in coaching term, that can always be a good thing because you're testing their problem solving. It can be how do you get out of that situation, or how can you use your skills, even though size difference, physical.
Yeah. Can I throw two things in there? So the first one you mentioned about the frogs, which I completely agree with. And I suppose this is a question not for you to answer, but a question for people to think about is, they're all on the same branch. Do they all need to be on the same branch? Should they be on the same branch? A lot of the sessions that I've seen in the past, and I'm very guilty of doing it myself, is almost a one size fits all. We're all doing the same thing, but actually some of them aren't ready for that. And maybe we have to look at the branches and not necessarily what the frogs are doing. Does that make sense at all? But I'm just and the other one about the sumo one, you're right. You mentioned a mismatch. Who's mismatched?
Depending on what you're looking at. If it's physicality, obviously, you'd assume the bigger player would be the bigger sumo wrestler would be stronger than the child. You'd hope so, and but equally the child could be more agile.
Yeah.
So it could be harder for the. So still a challenge. They've got different challenges, but it's all about their problem solving.
Definitely. I think the thing I was picking up there was probably before we get into managing difference, we make assumptions about people, and actually I'm sat there thinking, well, actually there's nothing stopping that kid slipping underneath that big sumo, getting on top, and then like flipping him, well, not flipping him over, but getting away from him.
That's what I meant by agility.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? It's maybe before we assume, let's observe and see what happens. I mean, obviously, always when it comes to managing difference, and we'll talk about this later, everything revolves around safety. So please don't think I'm encouraging you guys to start pairing up the physicality like this, but always have safety in your mind. But don't underestimate kids at the same time. Don't underestimate players. They've all got different strengths and they've all got different areas to improve on. But Lee, what did you think to the last one?
So I've just posed a question.
I can't see.
It's like, no, as long as you explain it. So again, for coaches, I'm just thinking to the sumo one. It's just a question of how do you coach players of different sizes, and I guess that's part of the reason you're coming on this evening. We'll talk about that. For me, I'm just going to give you a flavour. So 3 years ago, I was coaching a group of under 18s. They played as part of a college football program, and there was a young man who he was that skinny he could play hide and seek behind lampposts. That's how skinny he was. But he had trials for England futsal. We're not going to get into futsal this evening. One, because Mark will take over the conversation, and secondly, because I know some of the issues around it with people. But he had a trial to play futsal for the England, I think, under 18s and the 21s, whatever it might be. So his ability with the ball at his feet was unbelievable. But he was very, very slim, and his strength compared to players that were bigger than him was really different. So what I did with him was work and go, well, what have you got that other players haven't? And we come up with a load of things that he had that other players didn't. And then it was a case of, right, okay, so when you come up a player, let's go the sumo wrestler situation, somebody who's much bigger, stronger. How are you going to use and get an advantage of that person using the physical attributes that you possess that they don't? And it was a really good conversation. I wasn't necessarily coaching him in terms of under 18s, in terms of the physical corner getting better. I was thinking about how he could use his physical attributes. And again, it might be something for you to consider as coaches, because you'll all have a really small player in your team and a really big player in your team, and everyone in between. Is how do you get across to that smaller, slighter player and challenge them and help them to think, what have you got that other players haven't, and how can you use that? Likewise, with the sumo wrestler, that player is bigger and stronger at that moment in time. How are you going to play against somebody who's really nimble, really agile? So again, as coaches, and I've popped that in the chat box, maybe you can start to reflect on it, and we might start to kind of give you some support around it. But yeah, certainly just think about how you coach players to utilise the attributes that they do have in the physical corner. James, I'm getting you to think. You look as though I've made you think, mate.
No, I think what you've described there, and is kind of where we were heading, was how complex managing difference can be. And it's not, and I suppose one of the, if you're going to take anything away from tonight, is that actually there isn't a magic button that you can press or a magic pill that you can give. It's a really difficult task, and it's probably like you're always spinning plates trying to help people along. And there's lots and lots of variables involved in it. So I think that's what I suppose when I put this first slide together, that's what I was trying to get across, was there's a lot going on when you're trying to manage difference, and you're trying to work with people. So Lee, actually, no, I think I'm going to do this, aren't I? So in terms of the outcomes for the session, really, the first one, which we've already started to unpick, is how difference is presented across the four corners, because we've just had this conversation about physicality, technical ability, confidence. So difference is displayed across the four corners, and that's where we'll start the CPD session, around looking at the four corners and can we get a deeper understanding of what might be going on with a player, who's displaying difference within your group. We've managed to get some questions posed, some challenges that you guys are faced with. So Lee's going to take us through them, and we're going to try and provide some solutions for them. And then finally, we will obviously we'll present STEP, which many of you will be familiar with, which is a tool we use to manage difference. And me and Lee have both got some session ideas, one game each, just to kind of discuss how we might manage the difference within that session. So we will start with the FA four corner model, and having gone through the pictures on that first slide, I hope you've recognised how difficult it is. Me and Lee put this slide together, and we started talking about you've got a player in your group that is struggling to pass. And I suppose the question there is, what is going through your mind? What do you think is going through the players' minds around, well, why is he struggling to pass the ball? So Lee, what are your thoughts initially around this passing element?
The first thing that I want to get across to you as coaches is that we cannot see these corners in isolation, and that's going to come out. So in terms of passing, if I just look at it, if somebody isn't very good at passing, I can't just go, well, it's because they can't get their body position, and they haven't got the agility to get their body position in the angle. If I just think that, I'm going to really limit my thinking around how I support an individual. It may well be something to do with their ability to receive the ball. Now, if you think about it, if you cannot receive the football and you haven't got the ability to adjust your body and to judge the flight, the trajectory, the speed of a football, to be able to receive it, that could well make it very difficult for you to pass the football effectively.
Right. Can I, before you carry, can I jump in there?
Go on.
So link that then to they know they can't receive the ball. So how are they feeling when that ball is traveling towards them? Are they filled with confidence, or are they filled with fear?
And I'm going, they're not very confident and they're filled with fear. And
now,
go on.
If you think, put yourself in, to be honest, I don't think it really matters what age you are. If you are panicking as that ball is traveling towards you, I can guarantee that you're not going to be picking up the information around you that you're going to need to help you make decisions. And the chances are, when that ball arrives, it's going to probably bounce off you, or you're going to miss it, or you're going to just mistime the information that's around you.
And I think there's, again, for you as coaches to reflect upon, the biggest mistake that I see coaches make, and this might hurt you, I don't know, is playing two-touch football. I see it all the time, and I'm not saying don't do it. There's some context behind why I might do it, and I'll speak in a second. But if you imagine that you want your players to get better at passing, and the thing that you do is say we're playing two touch to make them pass it. The reality is, as that ball's coming towards me, and I haven't got the best touch in the world. I've got an amazing touch, by the way. But if I didn't, I'm kidding. If I didn't, then it's kind of that squeaky bum time. The ball's coming towards me. I'm really fearful of it, and the chances are one of two things: either my touch bounces off me and goes to somebody else in the first place, or I have a really bad touch. I need a second to get it under control again, and that's where you get this shielding of the ball, which becomes unrealistic. So I guess we're talking about your ability to pass the ball, and you need to be able to receive it. You might start to think as coaches, well, what things do I do? And when I say two touch, and it's a free kick, you might start to reflect a little bit around the emotions that could potentially bring out in players who struggle to pass the ball and receive it. So I guess my question would be to you as coaches, and you haven't got to answer this now, but maybe for reflection, does playing two touch genuinely help all of your players to get better at passing if that was a reason that you put that rule into place? Just a consideration. James, anything else? Do you want to link to kind of the social corner, physical corner a little bit around what might affect passing?
Well, I think there's a few things. I mean, to just touching back on the technical first, because you talk about their ability to receive. I see a lot of the times we're jumping to passing and receiving quite quickly because it's a team game, which I kind of understand. However, if you cannot manipulate the ball, you can't control it, as in move it, then you can't necessarily create passing options, because the chances are, particularly at youth football, you're going to be closed down quickly by a mob of kids. If you can't protect, twist, turn, shield, then yeah, you're going to link back to confidence. You're going to panic and you're going to boot the ball away. Alongside that, you're not going to be able to create the passing angles. If you don't have, so this links to the physical corner. If they haven't experienced those twists, those turns, they haven't experienced kicking the ball as an individual at with different degrees of power, then they're going to struggle to pass the ball anyway. And then if you think about the other aspect of it, what if I'm playing against a player? What if I'm playing with teammates who I know can't control, can't dribble, can't do anything? I know they don't have the confidence. I might not want to pass them to them. So I'm now branching into a social aspect of I don't want to pass to them because I know they might mess up. Or it might not have anything to do with football. It might be actually, I don't like him. He's in my class. I don't like him. I don't want to pass to him. So hopefully what we're trying to tease out now is this simple thing of they can't pass the football. What do we do about it? Actually, I'm hoping we're showing that there could be a range of reasons as to why they're not, or why they're struggling with it.
James, I'll generally, this is a genuine happen for me. So again, I always say you start and finish at grassroots football. So the last kind of group I played for was like a Sunday morning pub team type of thing. So just because there was a group of mates and we could have a game of football and it was just a social thing. I'm talking about 4 or 5 years ago now. I don't play. I've kind of boots are long hung up. But genuinely, I did this. Playing central midfield, dog and duck type thing, group of mates. I purposefully wouldn't pass to some of the players, right? Because if I was a centre midfield player and passed to a fullback, there was a bigger chance of them losing it than doing something effective with it. So I decided, make some conscious decisions, that I would play a long pass that might go out for a throw-in or a goal kick in the opponent's half, because that was less dangerous than giving it to a player. Now, I'm talking adult football, and I'm not suggesting that the kids think like that. But there will be children who, if you coach kids, that understand each other, know somebody is a good player, know somebody's struggling a little bit, and there's potential that they wouldn't give the ball to somebody because of that in your team.
Yeah, and I think I've coached children who have displayed that, where they're very good players, so they've stayed on the ball a lot. And obviously they get tackled a lot because they're staying on it more. They're not passing it, they're staying on the ball. And I, as a coach, and this was a long time ago, I made the assumptions that this player who's very technically good is making the wrong decisions. They don't know when to pass the ball, or Maybe they can't pass the ball. Maybe they've got an ego. Maybe they're arrogant. Maybe they are, they just want the glory. When actually, it wasn't that. They in their head, it was, if I give this ball away, we're potentially going to concede. And when you start thinking like that, you can kind of see it from their point of view. That actually, or yeah, I get that. Now that's not to make it right, but I suppose what you might end up doing is you say, oh, you force that kid to pass. So you must say, well, actually, yeah, you'll limit their touches and they must pass the ball to their teammates, which is only going to frustrate that child because they know what's going to happen, and the chances are it will happen. So it's about trying to find ways of supporting the ones that are struggling. Or I use the one where you say, a lot of times we say you must do this. I usually try and say, well, if you can pass the ball, that's great, but you make the decision. Try and pass the ball when you think it's right. So you're giving ownership to them. Now that's not to say they will actually do it, but you're trying to encourage it rather than force them to do it.
Yeah. I think there's other thing like the psychological social corner. How often do you see that there's a player who gets paid £1 a goal? It was 50p in my day. I'm pretty sure inflation, it could be £5, £10. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, you get players who are their parents or grandparents or whoever, they pay them, £5 a goal, £1 a goal. They're in front of goal. The decision is, actually, you probably should pass the ball and share it with your mate, but they don't because of that. So there might be some external factors which influence that pass. If I think about match day, as a coach, if you've been working on, let's say, staying on the ball, or you've been working on playing 1-2s, your winger playing a 1-2 to get behind the defender, and mum or dad is shouting, dribble it, take them on. Actually, the parents on the side of the pitch could compromise some of the coaching that you've been doing. So again, it's that thought process. Why hasn't a child passed, and why hasn't somebody passed? And hopefully we're getting across to you that these corners cannot be seen in isolation, because there could be a whole range of factors that affect it. And look, we've just put passing in there, but hopefully you can appreciate that in a bit more detail now. James, you want to any more detail to add?
I'm just thinking of that all of the examples I've seen of the external influences. As soon as you mentioned it, I'm thinking of those parents on the sideline, and I'm sure people on this call will know that, or have seen players that have just, they're great in training, but then on that match day things fall apart. And is it because somebody's turned up to watch them? Is it the shouting from the sideline? Is it getting different instructions? Is it the £5 a goal? It's, again, there's always reasons behind, what's going on, why they're struggling, or
pressure of a match day. That pressure, you see, and I'm talking about kids, but we could do adults as well. That the team talk on the way in the car. We've got to win this game, and all of a sudden, they're under pressure, and actually that affects how they behave. There was some research done around creativity, and kids and young people are far more creative when there's no adult influence in their games. So when you see the street football, and it's no wonder that they're far more creative, those players. But again, I'm not suggesting we don't have spectators and parents and people going to watch football, but certainly those team talks and mums and dads putting pressure on young people could have an effect on whether they pass the ball and how effective they pass the ball and who they pass the ball to, and if they do, where they do it on the pitch. And so there's a whole range of factors which hopefully we've got across to you.
Is there anything in the chat box? Any thoughts from people?
Hugo Rodriguez, I'm going to say hola on the basis it sounds very Spanish. So Hugo has typed, it's a typical situation for a goalkeeper. Now they have to play with their feet. Hugo, is there anything you want to add to that? I guess we've spoken a little bit since that. Is there anything some context you want to put behind it around the goalkeeper?
Hi, actually from Portugal.
Bom dia. Bom dia. I'll talk Portuguese then.
But now it's boa tarde already.
I've got it wrong, see. Sorry, he's embarrassing me.
No, that's okay. Yeah, but I think you touched everything that I was going to say. I was a goalkeeper, and once I started to get older, all the coaches wanted to play from the back with the keepers, and everything that you talk about it, the confidence and having the ball and all that stuff, the pressure from the outside, external factors as well, make us panic. And it was difficult for me to learn that when I was already an adult. And I think, fortunately, the kids are already starting to learn that path when they are younger, so they can get used to it, and it's not as abrupt as it was with me when I was an adult. But I think you touched everything. I was just trying to give an example of a position specific that I could relate to.
I think, well, I can relate to that too. So I played in goal for probably 3 or 4 seasons, and I am fine at striking the ball. So like goal kicks in training, or when I'm messing about, it was easy. You put me when it came to game day, my goal kicks would fall apart because of the external pressures going on. Like I knew in my head, if I messed this up, I was giving the ball away. And funnily enough, I've worked with so many goalkeepers that have said the same thing. That everyone looking at them, they know that if they mess this up, it's a goal, goal conceding opportunity. So, yeah, definitely relate to that one.
I used to play with a goalkeeper who couldn't kick it very far. We still joke with him today, like he wasn't very good at kicking it. So in terms of his ability to use the ball with his feet, it was limited, and that was out of his hands and off the deck. So again, just relating it to your players. Again, I've seen coaches where they'll shout to players, switch it, and they want a player to play a long pass. They might not have the strength in their thighs to be able to kick it over the distance that you as coaches are suggesting they might. The second part of that is we spoke about receiving. The person who's in a really good space might not have the capability of being able to judge the flight, speed, trajectory of the ball, as well as being able to control it over the same distance. So yeah, again, I'm thinking about goalkeepers and how far they can kick it and linking it to other players in the team. I think it's an interesting subject. I mean, even things like coaches asking players to, let's say, passing, spread out. And some kids don't spread out as far as the coach would like. But actually, the children are spreading out based on the distance that they potentially would receive the ball from. As opposed to the coach's head, sometimes we get them to spread out where we think is a good position. But they know the ball's not going to come to them because the person who's got it either hasn't got the physical ability to get it over that distance, or they might not have the technical capabilities to play over that distance under pressure when there's other opposition around them. So again, I guess we just keep developing the thought process around this passing and some of the, you can see when James mentioned it's a really complex subject. Hopefully you can see how it is. We've just spoken about passing and all the intricacies that could come with it. We've just spoken about passing. Think about all the other technical stuff as well. There's a whole range of things.
I think, just to kind of wrap that up, it's difficult, but hopefully it's made you start thinking a little bit deeper about the players that you've got and maybe what's going on, not just through their head, but through their body as well, and the external influences as well. There's potentially a lot going on. They're just some of the things we've actually talked about. A lot of it. We talked about, I think Lee mentioned about body composition, even gender. Lee, you made a point when we were putting this together about gender.
Yeah, and you're more knowledgeable about this than me in terms of kind of the female game and the hip alignment of females. And you were telling me, James, about there's some research to suggest there's no differences in males and females until they reach puberty. So again, if you coach female players, the body is different from a male. So therefore the hip alignment is slightly different, which affects how somebody might pass the ball in their body angle to be able to pass the ball. So again, it's something for you to consider. If you coach the female game compared to the male game, it might look different passing because of just how we are made between the different sexes of males and females. But James, you were saying there's some research on it?
Yeah, don't quote me on it, but I just remember a year or so ago reading something around it and just saying, like, from a development perspective, I think it's boys and girls develop, they're very physiologically similar up until they hit the puberty, and then things start to change slightly. Like you said, particularly around the hip alignment. Also, if I'm right, I think the females have weaker muscles within the knees or something, which could have an impact. But I definitely wouldn't want anyone going away and quoting me on that. Go on. If you do work in the female game, have a look into it, because you know, it might be beneficial.
Yeah, I'll tell you what we haven't mentioned, James, and we around experience, which we wrote down there. Do you want to touch on experience now? That might have an effect.
I'm just trying to remember what I said when I said experience.
No, I'll jump in. So we were talking about invasion games, and invasion games being things like netball, things like hockey, rugby, football, where there's a goal at both ends, and there's two teams competing against each other. And actually, we were speaking about, well, actually, if you have a player who plays lots of invasion games, they might understand the concept of why you might need to pass the ball in a team game better than somebody whose experience away from football is in let's say it's in something like a net wall game. So we're talking things like tennis as an example, or they are really good at cross country, or they're really good at swimming. They do those sports, great, and it might develop them in their physical capacity and resilience and lots of other things. But it might not. They might be supported in more detail if they play other sports, which are invasion games where you have to be able to pass the ball and play as part of a team.
Yeah, we link that to opportunity as well. Like, you'll have some kids, depending on the areas that you work in. I know I work in some areas that are quite deprived, that actually children might not have the opportunity to get those experiences. So again, that will be a factor. But yeah, there's so much going on. Anyway, Lee, do you want to get into this section?
Yeah, look, we wanted to try and make this as personal as we possibly can. So some of you might have replied to this, but we asked Mark and the guys at Knots FA if they could put this across to you. So you can tell us some of your challenges, and we can speak one or two ideas that might be relevant for you. So this is about some of the things that you find difficult or challenge you the most about coaching your players. So I think there's 5 things, generic things that have come back. So we're just going to answer them and just give you one or two few ideas to go away with and have a little go at. So there's another nice coach. I'm not sure who put this in. If you want to jump on and explain a bit more detail, but it was around understanding positional play and what's required to help the team function collectively. I think my biggest bit of advice is that don't worry about it. And I say don't worry about it because we all develop an understanding of why it's important to share and why it's important to be a part of a team and understanding teamwork at different rates. So if you think about your players, we're talking about positional play here, but some of them will just want to dribble all the time because they don't have a concept of when they don't realise why it's important and the benefits of passing the ball and sharing the ball. So eventually they will develop that. And I guess it's the same when we come to positional play, in the fact that, let's say under 9, so most of them are 8 years old. When you're attacking, everybody runs forwards. And when you're defending, some of them run backwards, some of them are lazy and want to stay at the pitch because they want to try and score. So I guess the first thing I would say is don't worry too much about it. The more they play, the better they'll become. Bees around a honeypot, don't worry. So that's the first thing to say. It's okay. I would suggest, rather than trying to overcoach them to play in specific positions, I would put practices on where they have to attack and defend, and there's transitions in it. So what I mean by that is, if me and James are playing on the same team, there's 2 of us, and I've got the ball and we're attacking, there's 3 things that I could probably do with it. One is pass to James. The second is dribble the ball or keep it for myself. The third is to shoot. They're the 3 things that I'm realistically going to do. Now, if that happens, James has got some decisions to help me. And it may well be, if I dribble and James sees that I'm going to dribble, he might be in a position to support me if the dribble's successful. But he might have a thought process of supporting me to defend if the dribble is unsuccessful. So therefore, what I'm helping James to do is start to think about, by playing in a 2 versus 2, is start to think about, when do I go and help my mate attack and when do I go and help my mate defend? And as coaches, you can provide that support for them based on the situation. And it might be that you put them, let's say they're 8 and 9, in a group of 3. and play a 3v3. And it might be, well, one person might think about going ahead of the ball to support. The other person might support behind the ball, and it still might get past to them, but they might need to defend as well. So, yeah, my big messages here are don't worry too much about positional play, because at some stage they will understand it. And I would put more importance on, one, them loving the game, and secondly, developing an appreciation with the ball at their feet. The work that you can do would be put them in situations where they have to attack and defend, and help them understand, when do I go and help my mate attack, and when do I go and help my mate defend, and the reasons behind it. So that's what I would suggest for an 8-year-old players, 9-year-old players. James, anything you want to add to
that? Your message on it's okay is a good one. I think as well, just linking back to what we just talked about, there's potentially a whole host of reasons why they're not getting it. Physically and technically, perhaps, you know, they're still focused on developing the skills to play as opposed to the where. That said, I spend a lot of my time trying to incorporate concepts of space. So if they can understand the use of space as an individual when they've got the ball and when they haven't got the ball, then you can start, then as they develop later on, you can start talking about how that space is influenced based on where they are on the pitch. But it's a long-term process. It's not going to be fixed with a couple of sessions. It's a if I can understand that, if I move away from my teammates to give them time, and it might take defenders away, then it starts to help other people, and then you just build it from there. And your message around like smaller sided, like 2v2, 3v3s, I think that's a really good opportunity to kind of to embed them. So I'll give you the example of the player who's got the football and their teammate comes closer to them. I can use that option to say, well, if you come closer to them, who do you bring with you? The defender. All right. Do you want that? As a player on the ball, do you want the defenders near you? No, they don't. Right. So what can so you just start talking to them about, right, we need to give each other space, and we need to use that space. If that makes sense. That's what I'd be thinking around the concept of space. Create it, deny it.
Cool. And I guess the other thing, and I've seen is coaches would say, no, don't go past the halfway line when your team's attacking. Don't go past the halfway line. I would rephrase that in terms of positional play. If you're a defender, is try and, I always say to my players, if they are that defensive player in the game, is try and position yourself between your goal and the football. So if it was to come towards you, you can stop them scoring. So try and position yourself between your goal and where the football is. So if your team lose it, you're in a position to try and stop the other team scoring. And you can help the players with that, which then links to now how far back do I go? And in terms of their position, it might just help them kind of move with the ball in between the goal in terms of being a good defensive. So that's hopefully that's useful. Challenge 2, James?
I think it's very similar, this one.
So there's in the lobby, I'm going to Mark's on it. Cheers, Mark. Yeah, I think it probably is the ability. I guess the difference in that is the ability to play in different positions. So I guess that's thinking about, it's understanding the game, but then actually how do I play as a defender and how do I play as an attacker? Or what are the skills maybe required to play in different positions? I don't know. If you pose that question, feel free to unmute yourself and just give us a bit of context behind it.
Mark Cassie, I think I posed both questions by accident, logging in at different times, but definitely kind of a theme in terms of a challenge with my kids at the moment. But we've basically managed an under-8s team, so we've played basically like a diamond 1-2-1, and I've tended to rotate the kids in at least two positions. So a defender's played midfield, or even had a goalkeeper playing striker. So we've been really fluid and really had a good first season. And a lot of teams we set up 2-1-1. So we, in terms of transitioning, there's been this big emphasis on attacking and defending with the two midfielders. And the kids have done great. I guess it kind of goes back to those first slides around four corner model, it's my kind of lesser confident kids who struggled a little bit, but I've kind of protected them. Like one kid was in defence, he got exposed a couple of times, and I've moved him into midfield. And it's more so those kind of kids, I guess, who haven't quite got that confidence as much as the others to appreciate like what that role is required. And then you've got the parents kind of compounding the match by saying, you know, stay back or stay forward, and it kind of conflicts with what I might have been telling them, or even the position they're in. But it's all these various kind of challenges that come down to this positional play.
Okay, yeah, I mean, a couple of bits of advice that I would give. Cheers, Mark, for putting that context to us. I think the first thing is, and again, I don't know how you do this, but for every coach, I wouldn't rotate them in loads of different positions in every match. And you might not do that, I don't know. But my advice would be, if you want them to get better at playing in your diamond as the furthest player back or the player closest towards your goal, one, I wouldn't call them a defender because that might turn them off. I would call them something else, like the magic man, or that's probably the superhero, if you like, the person who's going to stop it and start the attacks. So I guess the naming of that position, I would say, could be quite crucial to make it a bit more motivating, would be one bit of advice. The second bit would be to give that person an opportunity to play there on a more consistent basis, as opposed to potentially moving around different positions every week, or moving around different positions more than once in a game. So it's just the consistency of playing in that position. So to do that, I would look at who I'm playing against. And yeah, I know you don't keep results and scores in the league that you play in, but you've got a decent idea of who the better teams are in the league. So I'd maybe pick and choose games when that player that you're talking about that struggles in the deepest position, I may kind of just pick some specific games which are going to be able to help that individual. I'd also maybe put, if you are putting that individual in the deep position, I would consider who my midfield players are in front of them. So again, you start to think about your pairings on the pitch maybe when you rotate your players. So it's not just a constant rotating of the players. You know, how long do you play them in a position for? Which games do you play them in that position? So they get equal game time in different places. And then who do you play them against? So giving them that experience of the positions and the formation you're playing would be my advice. Hugo's put the mailman, as you put it, that distributes. I love it. What's that in Portuguese, Hugo? I don't have to answer that. I don't know if that helps, Mark, and give you some thoughts.
Yeah, it does. But I did find, you know, when they say, "Oh, where am I playing?" If I say you're in defence, you know, you're in midfield on the right, or you're up front, that does help them kind of grasp the role, you know, for the game. But yeah, absolutely. We've looked at, you know, adding that consistency as well. Brilliant. But I'm quite a fan of. I don't want to define, you know, an 8-year-old that you're a defender or you're a midfielder. So, you know, it has worked well as well, mixing it up a bit. But typically they know the roles. It's really the weaker kids who don't just struggle with that, but other things. And but it's good to hear like the 2v2 and the 3v3. I think that could really definitely help.
I think something to think about as well is because of their age, they are still going to be heavily focused on the ball and their ability to control the ball or steal the ball off opponents. And many kids are afraid of being tackled or even tackling. So giving them lots of opportunities to dribble, to twist, turn, but also to emphasize around the tackling aspect of it. In terms of, a lot of time you hear a lot of people say, "Oh, get stuck in, make the tackle, boot it, clear it," very physically kind of dominating. I always go down the line of, no, you're nicking it, you're stealing it, you're gonna develop an attack, and you have to get that mindset into all of your players, not just the defender, the striker, because everyone defends and everyone attacks.
Yeah.
And it's getting them to understand that they're trying to steal the ball, nick the ball off that player so that they can then go and do something. And that's where your 1v1s, your 2v2s and stuff come in, because it gives you the opportunity to try that.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and then you can do so, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but then you can start to think about some of the sessions that you do. So if you want a player to steal the ball, I start with changing the way they tackle. So it's in the step principle, it's the task that I give them. Rather than just go and make a tackle, I say to them, tap your foot on top of the ball. Because what they're doing then is they have to learn how to slow down so that they can just tap their foot on top of it. And then once you've got the hang of that bit, then I say, right, once you tap your foot on top of it, can you try and scoop the ball away? And then I start introducing different tasks in that particular defensive moment so that they can steal it better rather than, in their mindset, just go and collide.
Yeah, one on that, just going off in a bit of one last question, I promise, guys, and let you guys move on. But on the tackling, one of the managerial challenges I've got at the moment, one of my kids, he has this kind of tendency to, when he comes into a tackle, he's jumping in or almost jumping sideways sometimes. So rather than having a foot on the ground, and it does, I'm genuinely a bit concerned for him or an opponent. You know, when he's not doing it, he's not doing that consistently, but every once in a while he will literally jump into a tackle 2-footed, and it's not something is, you know, like us as adults, all it's a malicious tackle. It's not coming from that. It's just how his body's, you know, that coordination aspect and that enthusiasm to get the ball.
Yeah, so you're hitting on loads there.
But, yeah, I was wondering, is there kind of any best practice on, this is an 8-year-old kid, and how to advise him, you know, about, you know, learning to tackle without jumping in 2-footed.
So obviously there's a range of reasons why that might be happening, and I can't say specifically why, but it might be that obviously if you imagine in a child's mind which is overloaded with stimulus, it's very hard for them not to kind of get excited. So that's probably driving a bit of that.
Yeah.
He's also struggling with managing his coordination, you know, and you know, the distance relationship and all that kind of stuff that's going on, and it's a moving target as well. So there's a lot going on there. I've done like I've tried to do games where there's stopping practices, you know, so like they have to, you get them to run as fast as they can towards like a cone or objects and stuff like that, and then you give a signal and they have to try and stop as quickly as they possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
That might help develop that kind of coordination aspect. It might be kind of it's very difficult to do with kids, but I've done things around getting kids to do like deeper breathing and slowing down and thinking.
You know what?
That's harder to do.
He's getting quite excited. You know, like you just mentioned that, definitely linked to his kind of level of excitement, just sheer excitement and enthusiasm to get the ball. Yeah.
So again, it might be at the games where it's happening, you might give him a specific task to focus in on, and it won't always work, but it might be your task is to, like I said before, try and steal the ball and make a pass. Mm-hmm. And you keep reinforcing that with him whenever you can, so that you know, because you will switch off and you'll go into that excitement mode, but then you go back around to that task again and say, right, just remember your challenge. Your challenge is to steal. Can you make 3 steals within the game? So that might work, you know.
Brilliant. To add into that, James, just for you as coaches, I'm going to ruin your enjoyment of football tonight. Over a 15, not the first 15 minutes. If you watch the football tonight, just over a 15-minute period, do a tally up the number of tackles that you see, and tally up the number of interceptions. And what you'll find is, hopefully the game won't stitch me up, but what you'll find is there's hardly any tackles and there's loads of interceptions. So when we talk about tackling, we've gone off on a different subject, but hopefully you as coaches, you'll recognise some kids like to tackle and some kids don't. The important thing, we don't work on it in this country as English coaches. We get too worried about tackling. If you look at the game, there's far more interceptions. So from a defensive perspective, I would encourage you as coaches to help your players understand how to intercept a pass, how to intercept the ball and recognise those triggers and things that are going to happen where they can get the ball without tackling it, because it happens far more frequently. If you're playing matches at this moment in time, do it for your team's games. I promise you won't believe the difference in the number of tackles compared to the number of interceptions, which is really important. So for me, I would say I wouldn't worry about the tackling because, one, it's not as important as you think. But secondly, the players that like to do it, I explained at the start, the Lion, there was one in my team. There probably that I played for at that point in time. There's probably 2 or 3 that did it. The rest didn't. So I wouldn't worry about the tackling bit. It was do some tallying up, do a bit of match analysis, and I promise you, you'd be better off working on intercepting. So that player who's either not very good at tackling, doesn't know when to tackle, I would put something around. You've got to try and intercept as many passes as you can to try and start an attack. Little things like that would be really important. And that goes for if you're working in the adult game or the kids game. Same principle applies around tackles and interceptions.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot.
No worries. Do you want to move on to the next ones? We might have touched on some of them. We're getting towards 8 o'clock. I'm conscious that we did say it was going to be an hour.
I was just about to say, Lee. What we'll do is we'll go to the next one, but if we think we've started to answer them, we'll move on quickly because I appreciate we've got games to show and stuff. So this is the challenge 3, unknown age group, level of commitment and attendance.
Go on, you go, mate. You go.
Okay, attendance is a difficult one because it's probably an external factor that you can't necessarily control. What I would say is try and be understanding from the child's point of view, or the player's point of view for that matter, depending on the age. There's a lot of things that are going on. There's a story that was told to me by a previous manager who said there was a player that was always turning up to his session late. And every time he arrived late, he would punish him by making him do laps of the pitch before he could participate. What he didn't realise was that kid lived on the opposite side of, the borough of London, wherever it was, and he had to take 3 buses alone to get to this training session to be with his mates. He never understood that. So this kid is making a massive commitment to get to this session, and he gets there and he's being punished for his lateness. And not recognised for the commitment that he's made. So my first point, we would try and understand why is there an attendance issue? What is going on there? And is there anything that can be done to help them? And it might just be a level of understanding. Level of commitment, some motivation, engagement. It's hard to answer because there can be a variety of reasons. I mean, I work with a lot of children who are not interested in football. However, if I make it into a playful activity, or I put a theme on it, like kids are into what kids into at the moment, Fortnite. Kids are into Fortnite at the moment. If I reframe the game into Fortnite, suddenly they become interested. Or is it because is it because of the types of sessions I'm doing? So kids, if you ask a kid or a player what do they want to do, the first thing they'll say is, we want to play a match. But we tend to do the warm-up, do a drill, maybe take that drill into a skill, maybe then take that skill into a game if we've got the time. Well, they want to play matches. So why don't we start with a match? Why don't we raise the bar, get high intensity, let's get into some 3v3s, 4v4s, or if you're open age, 7v7, 11v11, whatever it is, start with a game. Set what you want them to learn and see if they can do it within the game. And if you need to come out of the game, then you do that. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
100% agree. Look, I think the social corner, there's a whole host of reasons why somebody might be late. James has spoken about getting across London on a bus. Same might be the case in central Nottingham to get from one side of the city to the other on a tram. I don't know. So again, there could be a whole host of social reasons. It could be, let's say at this moment in time during Ramadan, if you have any Muslim players in your team, it might be that they are at prayers and they can't get there on time, as an example. So just have a little consideration for, there's loads of things in the social corner as to why players can't get there. If they're adults, there might be childcare issues. It might be they've got to be at work. If it's kids, it might be something to do with mum and dad which prevent them. So I would say first and foremost, just have a consideration for why. Quite often, and this again for you as coaches, reflect on this. If Notts County or Nottingham Forest, and I don't want to offend anybody by saying the wrong phrases, so Notts County or Nottingham Forest or Mansfield Town, don't leave Mansfield out, as the professional teams. If you support those teams, you go and watch them when they're playing well and it makes you happy, right? The attendances get bigger because the team are playing well and it makes you happy. Think about it from a player's perspective. If your players are turning up for training and they love being there and they enjoy doing what they're doing, they'll turn up every week, I promise you. So I'm not suggesting, and this, it's not digging anybody out here, but just have a little think. James has said, if your players want to play matches and you turn up for training, if you're not giving them what they want from their hobby, because it is a hobby, unless any of you are coaching in an academy, then if they don't enjoy that hobby, they stop doing it. Just think as coaches, if you think of another sport that you play or you like doing and you don't do it now, what are the reasons you don't like doing it? Because you didn't enjoy it for one reason. So again, I guess I'm challenging you as coaches now to just think, what is it your players are asking for? They're asking for a match. What does the match do? It gives them emotions. Think about the last ditch tackle, the setting up their mate, the overhead kick, the whipping a corner in and somebody getting headers. Think of all the emotions that a match gives your players. That's what they're asking for. And if all those emotions come through and they're happy and they love it, I'm reasonably confident. Forget the social corner. As long as they can get there all the time, they will be committed and they'll be in attendance. So maybe you as coaches go away, think about your players. What do they like? What don't they like? How do you give them what they want, as well as helping them to get better at what they need? And that's quite difficult to do. What do they want? Matches. What do they need? How are you going to help them get better in the context of that? And that would be my advice on it.
Okay. I appreciate, though, that's quite a difficult one to answer, because I suppose we keep reiterating there's a whole host of reasons why something might be happening.
Yeah, isolation.
Right. I think we should skip this one.
I'd agree. We touched on that.
We're going to talk about it anyway in a bit.
Yeah.
So we'll skip that one. Attitude towards learning. Is a person who posed that on the call? I'd love to know more about that. Attitude towards learning. I think for me, it's making things relevant, and I know we touched upon it just now, making things relevant to what they want to do, and being clever about how you then not manipulate, but you direct them or guide them towards things that they need. So I know kids want to play a match, so I'm going to give them a match, but I might start using rewards or restrictions or something to try and bring out a learning outcome to help them get better. And that can be any kind of outcome across the four corners. So if I want them to work better as a team, then I might say, okay, we're going to play a game called 3-2-1, and everyone starts with 3 points. If you score, it's worth 3, but then you get knocked down to 2. If you score again, it's 2, but then you get knocked down to 1. If you score again, you only get 1. And the way you get back up to 3 is if you pass the ball to a teammate. So I've used like a reward system there to encourage them to start working together to score goals. Because if I'm on a 1 and I know my teammate's on a 3, well, in order to win the game, I need to get the ball to him, get the ball to him. He scores, hopefully, maximize the score. So it might be that. But yeah, again, it could be a lot of reasons why.
I tend to think, James, that I keep going back to it, playing a match. Like invariably, when I'm going to say attitude towards learning, it's basically kids messing around. I'm suggesting, if you've asked that, it's kids and players messing around. And I quite often say to coaches, do your players ever mess around, or how often do they mess around when they're playing a match? And the answer, think about you guys as coaches, is not very often. If they're playing a match, they don't often mess around, and their attitude towards playing a match is a good one. So I'm going to talk about some little practices that you can put on, but I'm not suggesting you turn up for training and play a match for an hour at all. I'm suggesting we put things on which are going to provoke emotions: winning the ball, losing the ball, being successful, not being successful, losing it, having to try and win it back, making a mistake, having to try and make up for your mistake. So again, it's little things that if the players are standing around, if they haven't got to think, that's when they start messing around. So I would say get your players thinking about the game when they've got the ball and they haven't got the ball as much as they possibly can, as opposed to working on a passing practice in isolation. Put it as part of a game where they're going to have to attack and defend, but actually the game's passing. And I'm going to show you something which might support that in a second.
But just on that, I mean, I'm just thinking there again, attitude towards learning. I've seen sessions where coaches are screaming at the players because the intensity's low, the quality's poor, and they're screaming. And it's the practice design. It's got nothing to do with their attitude towards learning. It's actually the challenge is not good enough, and they're getting bored. So that could be another reason. So I've suggested many times, actually, why don't you restrict the space a bit, because that will raise the intensity, and you might then see, yeah, mistakes might happen a little bit more, but they might try and get a little bit more focused towards it. So, you know, there could be a lot of things going on here around, you know, their attitude towards learning. Do you want to quickly introduce Step, and then we'll skip my game because you're going to go into tactical pad. So do you want to introduce Step and then talk about your game?
Yeah, I'm going to introduce it with it. So look, I think hopefully if you've been on any kind of course with the FA, you've seen this, whether it would be the FA Playmaker Level 1 all the way through to the UEFA A licence. This is relevant. So in your practices, if you take nothing else away from tonight, just think about those 3 things, write them down. You'll get the recording, but Step. Because if you want to make it easier or harder, these 3 things will do it. So changing the space. You make the space bigger, there's more time and space on the ball. You make it smaller, sometimes it can become harder. Changing the task, the equipment you use. Let's say you play with adults, you're a size 5 football. By just using the size 3 with adults is going to make the task harder because the ball is smaller to be able to receive. Likewise, if you coach littlies, the 7-8-year-olds, they play with a size 3, stick a size 5 football in, and it's easy to control. So I don't want to touch on it too much because I'm going to explain it in a second in a little bit more details and just some ideas that I've got in my head around how I might just adapt a coaching session. So James is going to flick it up on the screen in a second. I might just stop sharing in one moment. So all I'm going to do, I'm looking at under 12s plus. I guess what I'm saying to you as coaches, well, here's a practice. You might think about adapting it, and I'll talk about some adaptations that you might make for young players. So I'm going to try and be a bit of a Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville. James is going to stop sharing his screen. I'm going to share a different screen. Just bear with me for one moment. Thanks, mate. Bear with me. This is where it all goes wrong. It's not perfect. I'm hoping you can see that. Perfect. And I can move things around. Is that a yes? Can you see the black? Perfect. Yeah. James is nodding at me. Right. So, look, this is a game. Let's say receiving to pass forwards. Now, I do this for under 12s plus, and it might help with some positional work. And like, if you think it's relevant for your players and they're younger, then fine. It's just where I would pitch it. All I've just tried to do is show you how I might manage difference, but I might want to make sense of it to the game of football. So in terms of making sense of it to the game of football, I might be working with midfield players, and I've put in there my number 6. So that player there might be a central defender. They might play in a back 2 or a back 3 if that's what you play. But I've got a number 5 in the box there. And the idea would be they get from one end to the other. So the ball comes in here to this player. Let's move the football into that player. And the idea is they've got to try and get the ball into one of these players to try and score. That's as simple as the game is. So it's receiving to pass forwards. That's as simple as the game needs to be. Now, what I would do, the ball goes in here, then they swap sides, and then they receive it again. Let me just get rid of that. So these players would receive the ball again, and they go back in the opposite direction. So that's as simple as the game is. Now, how have I managed difference in this? Well, the first thing is I put different sized areas. So if you think about the number 6, it's going to be far easier for that person to receive the ball up and down there. So therefore, the pass can be a little bit more wayward, shall we say. So again, if you want to help your players and there's a player that might need a bit more time to receive it, you might have a longer box in one of the corners. If you look at the box that number 5's in, that's a smaller box. So you might put a player who's more competent at receiving the ball in that box, if you like. But then again, if these players here are trying to pass the ball into there, that's much more difficult pass to get the ball in because the box is smaller. So again, you can start to see how little things that I've done with the spaces that I've used might have an effect on managing some of those differences. The other thing that I've done is played a 4 versus 3. Again, you might start to select your players, who plays in the 4 and who plays in the 3. So that might be another element for you to consider. The other one would be whether you play, bear with me, this is where we're getting fancy. You play 2 games at the same time to increase repetition. So it might be that you play a 2v2 and a 2 versus 1. You might even go, depending on what you want to do, you might even go, well, actually, we're going to play 2 1v1s and a 2 versus 1. So when we talk about players, there's no reason why you couldn't play one game in this practice, or you couldn't play 3 games in the same practice. I guess then the thought is, well, what if I've got odd numbers? Well, one of the things that I might do, you might only play 1 striker. Let me just get rid of that one. I'm going to put that one to the side there. And actually what might happen is that this player could go in both boxes. So rather than just in one box, they're in 2 boxes. So let's say this player has got the ball now and they're playing against here. This number 10 might have a decision to make. Which box do I go to so this person can pass to me? Now, let's say this person's thinking about passing the ball as well. Well, actually, the decision that I can't get the ball into this box because that player's gone in there to pass the ball. So actually, I might have to retain possession until I see an opportunity to pass the ball. And the idea is if I get the ball in, I pass it there, the same person gets the ball back and goes in the opposite direction. So all I'm trying to show you is I might change the spaces. 1. It may be that I change the players. Now, the other thing that I could do if I work with young players is I could change the task. So let's just say we didn't have these players in. Let's just move these players out for a second. It might be that if I'm playing and I'm working with young players and the task isn't around passing, bear with me, that this player here can dribble into that box and that's a goal. They then have to turn around and go back the other way and try and score. So it could be about dribbling. So I might change the task if I wanted to get that out. I might also have players in. So I could, if I wanted to, have target players in the ends as well as players dribbling into the ends. So I could get the same stuff happening. So I could get dribbles and passes into the end zones. So that could be another way of just kind of changing the practice. James, go on, you want to say something?
I'm just thinking, going back to your first theme around passing. The task doesn't always have to be for the players in possession. So you could give a task to the defender. So if you're trying to increase confidence of the players and they're always getting tackled by a defender who's not restricted, then give the defender a task. And it might be as simple as holding a ball might distract them enough, or balancing a ball in their hand. I know some people, I mean, I've asked defenders to dribble a football, and I know I've been challenging, well, it's not real because defenders don't have a football. I say, I get that, but the purpose is the attackers need to build their confidence, get success of passing into the zones. So I need to restrict the defenders to increase the opportunities. So you might, like I said, you might give the task to the defenders as opposed to the attackers.
Yeah, it could be another one.
Which is also adding equipment. So if we're talking about the step principle, you're adding equipment into the game as well.
Yeah, and again, I'm just going to take, I mean, this is a template. If you want to steal it, like, fine. Hopefully that's the idea that we've put it on there. I mean, the other one might be, you might have a player. Let's say we're playing directional now. Let's just add another player in there. So at that end, let's just add another player in there from that perspective. There, you might even say, well, let's say you wanted to work on crosses, for example, first time crosses, you might even say, well, this player can play in either box, and if the team pass the ball there and it comes back and we get a first time shot into the goal, it's worth double, for example, and you just get them to work on crosses from those areas. You could say actually we're playing offsides if you work with the older age groups. So again, all I'm trying to do is show you that actually we can change the spaces. I can make the pitch bigger, smaller. I can change the tasks. It might affect things. What else might I do? Bear with me. Again, I'm just trying to give you some little ideas now. So it might be that, let's say I've got a 4 versus 3. Let's move this one, that area. And you want the players to kind of spread out a little bit in the practice. You might say, well, I might put some lines in, and you might say to the team in black, when your team have got the ball, try and occupy both wide channels to try and get them to spread out a little bit. That might be the same kind of game. You can still pass the ball in. I've lost my where are they? This is me trying to be Carragher and Neville and messing up. But I haven't got the target players in, but I can still play with the target players. Just get these players to say, look, don't lock them in because that becomes unrealistic, but just try to stay in those areas of the pitch. So look, I'm hoping that's useful as a little practice and just a demonstration of how I might try and change things. I might purposely pair these 3 players up. There's lots of things that you can do, and hopefully space, task, equipment and players enables you to do that. I'm just going to stop sharing, James.
I suppose the final point for me would be, don't see these as progressions. Don't see this as a, right, I've got this task, this to add in and add in and add in. You have to look at the players and try and figure out what they need. So does a particular individual or small group need it to be made easier? Do I need to restrict the defenders so that they have opportunity to get success? Which players need more of a challenge? Which players need more guidance? It's not a case of, right, I'm going to do my session plan and I've got A, B, C, D, and E types of games. Let's just go through them all, because that won't meet their needs. It's about watching what's happening, and then just thinking, well, actually, do I need a safe zone? Do I need a new task? Do I need to make it an overload or an underload? Whatever it is, but don't just see them as things to throw in, as progressions. And I think we were going to end on the game and just open it up to the floor, really, weren't we? We've gone 20 minutes over. I blame you, Lee, because you keep talking.
My missus says that. Keep talking.
Mark, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Not from my side of things, guys. I think I open it to the floor to the coaches to see what they if they want to ask any questions, either obviously on the topic relating or anything else coaching wise, would be good.
And if not, I suppose we can say, thank you very much for attending. If you need to shoot off. I haven't had my tea yet, and I can hear the kids screaming at me.
I've had my tea, and I'm happy to stay on for a couple of minutes if you've got questions that anybody wants to ask about the subject or anything. I'm happy just to stay on for a couple of seconds if anyone wants to come on screen and ask a couple of questions.
Yeah, definitely.
I hope it was. We only planned this for an hour, so James and I, we planned it out. We were like, okay, what's the content? Have we got enough to talk? But yeah, maybe we've discovered we can talk a little bit longer. And I know it's 20 minutes over, but yeah, hopefully you can tell we're quite passionate about the subjects, and hopefully it's been useful for you as coaches. I always look at these CPD events around three things: collect, confirm, and challenge. And collect being, I've collected some new stuff for me to have a go at. Confirm, it might be confirming things that you already know. Brilliant, great, you're doing a great job. And challenge, it might challenge your thought process a little bit. And I'm hoping that at least at some point over the last hour and 20 minutes, it's done that. So apologies. I don't apologise, because hopefully we've given you some good information, and we're quite keen to talk about the subjects and give our time to support you as coaches. So if you want to ask any questions or anything like that, feel free to come on the screen, unmute yourself, type it in the chat box. I'm happy to stay on for 2 or 3 minutes in case there is. Is this the countdown theme tune?
Just waited to hear, see who's going to come on. Don't be shy, guys. While you've got FA staff here, then please utilise that expertise. So.
But if you've got nothing, don't worry about it.
Don't feel pressured.
If you need to leave at this point, feel free to. You haven't got to stay on it. We're just hanging on now in case you want to ask us anything.
Guys, I've got a quick question. We've got an under-8s team. We've been playing 5-a-side. And we're just about to start a summer league, which is great for the kids. And then we're transitioning up to 7-a-side. So I guess it's quite a broad, open question. But as a coach, what kind of heads up would you give me for that kind of, this stage we're quickly about to go through? So obviously 5-a-side, there's a lot of similarities in terms of the play. But I just thought, with your experience with kids of that age group, because this is my first season, is there any kind of tips and best advice you can give me? And we've just added 3 new kids as well to go up to 7-a-side, so we've got a really good squad together.
I guess the first thing I would say is that have in mind. I mean, I don't want to talk about formations too much, but no, you're all going to play. I think Mark, it was Mark, isn't it, who spoke?
Yeah,
you spoke about playing a diamond, didn't you, Mark? That was your kind of your 5-a-side formation that you asked the kids to play in.
Yeah, I mean, moving forward, I'm thinking it's just going to be like 2-3-1 now, so pretty similar, really. Right.
So again, your challenge there is somebody's used to be playing as in the defending position, is used to playing on their own as one. Now you're asking them to play as a pair. So I guess your thought process then would be, okay, well, how do I defend in a pair compared to a 2? So again, it's that thought process, and you might have to do some coaching around coaching in twos.
Yeah, good shout.
That might be one. Just plan out for what's coming next. So again, if you're thinking about a 2, 3, and a 1, I guess the role of the striker is not necessarily, or the person further up the pitch doesn't change a great deal. But again, you might start to think about them playing in a group of 3 if there's some midfield players. That's how you do. So then you might start to think about, well, what oppositions, what kind of scenarios will they come up against? So if I play as a midfield 3, there might be a chance where the opposition have 3 midfield players. So I might have to get used to playing in some 3v3 games for those players.
Yeah.
And how I might do it. So how do I defend and attack in a 3? It could be that actually I play against an opposition who have got 2 players in midfield. So how do I deal with that? You're one striker. And like I said, I'm not trying to pigeonhole positions, but you're clearly going to do it. How does that person, because the opposition might play a defensive 2. So how do I attack as a striker against 2? They might play a 3. So how do I play in a 1 versus 3? So maybe I would suggest just thinking about the different scenarios that might present themselves and helping your players just to attack and defend in even numbers, odd numbers, and outnumbered.
I think the thing that's coming across there is I've seen a lot of coaches when they jump to 7v7, 9v9, and so they start to do the bigger games in training, and the kids aren't quite ready for